hubs. If you remember from last year, we made hubs by cutting a bottle in half. We took bottle caps, we put them on with zip ties, anchored them on with zip ties. And the idea was that we could use the struts, threads of the struts, and just screw the strut on. It makes a nice snug fit. Looks great. Of course, that only works when the bottles match the caps, and as we found out last year that didn't happen for all the bottles. So this year is going to be different. Okay, so we need zip ties. I've got a ton of these, so you don't need to get these. I'll give them to everyone that wants to make some hubs. Also, Gatorade bottles, again, don't worry about these. I've got a ton of these, enough to make all the hubs. These are nice because they're nice and solid. They make great hubs. Okay, the caps. We have to be able to put a zip tie through the cap. So we're going to get our trusty soldering iron, and we're going to make a couple holes. Now, I would do this on a surface, but I'm going to hold it up now, and just so you can see, I just press it right near the top, push it through, and then just kind of jiggle the end of the soldering iron to make the hole a little bit bigger. Try not to breathe in the fumes, they're kind of stinky. Okay, at 180 degrees opposite the other hole, I push in again. You want to get this fairly straight so that the zip tie goes straight through. Okay, those holes should be big enough that we can take a zip tie and thread it through the hole. Now, remember, we want to have the caps facing outward, so we want to make sure that when we thread the zip tie through, the thread will be facing outward so that the struts can obviously screw in on that. Okay, so I just slide that in the hole. It goes in pretty easily, and I push it through the other end. And that's one cap. Obviously, we need to put more on there. We have 4-way hubs, 5-way hubs, and 6-way hubs. Okay, so that's the number of caps you're going to put on. So this is going to be a 4-way. I've made 4 caps. I put them on, so I've got them on there. I'm just going to put this on just so it just catches, okay? Just a couple clicks, so it's not going to come apart. I spread them out roughly equidistant. And now I'm just going to pop this over the top of the Gatorade bottle right into that first groove. That's a nice fit. Okay, and it's on there pretty nicely. And now I'm just going to move the caps so they're pretty evenly distributed. We want them at 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock for a 4-way hub. Okay, now they're on there tightly, but we don't want them to move around too much. So we're going to anchor the zip tie by soldering a hole on either side of the zip tie that we're going to anchor with yet another zip tie. Now when you're doing these, just make sure you don't touch the zip tie that's on there. If you hit it with the soldering iron, it'll just pop and you have to start all over again. Okay, so those holes are big enough now that I can get a zip tie through there. So I take the cap off the Gatorade bottle and I push through the zip tie through the bottom hole, use my finger to push it out the top hole, and then tighten up the zip tie nice and snug, and that's going to really hold that set of caps on there really nicely, so they're not going to move around too much. You can get rid of the excess by either cutting it with a blade or scissors, so we don't have too much hanging off. Now I have 2 of these at least, so I want to really make sure this thing doesn't move around too much. So I put on my second zip tie, just kind of feed it through the second hole. Again, push it through and snug it down. Okay, this guy is nice and tight, and it looks good. Now the caps can still move a little bit, which is good because we'll be adjusting this as we're putting the structure together. Now, the key here is now that we have caps that all fit the bottles, I can take this hub, put the cap back on, and I can take one of my struts, and now, since this cap came from this bottle, I can just screw this bottle on this hub, and it's nice and tight. It's not going anywhere. We don't have to use any special attachment, and it's nice and snug. And you can see this is why we want to have the ends free, because once we have a hub on the other side, we have to be able to rotate each end. So there you go. Hubs.